Let's keep it going. This next topic, I love it. I think you will too. It touches on things that, we experience and consume every day. And I think all of us in this room have observed and seen some of the changes technologically over the past several years. Session title is Designing the Meta Mobility Future. And I'd like to introduce two of our panelists to the stage. First, Kristen Slanina. Kristen is the Chief Innovation Officer at Park My Fleet. She's also a thought leader in the future of mobility, also a board member of Comstock and Ouster, and finally part of the faculty here at the Fast Future Executive on the future of mobility. So thank you, Kristen. Next, we have Alan Clellan. Alan is a board member at the Transportation Channel. Alan was formerly at DKS Associates, where he was the leader in the Intelligent Transportation Systems and Connected Vehicles group. So thank you, Alan. And I'm going to turn it over to the panelists here, but before we do, our third panelist, Dr. Martha Beckenfeld, unfortunately she couldn't join us today, but she did help us prepare a bit of a video to kind of kickstart this session. So we'll view that first.
Today, I would love to invite you to join us for the new world in meta-mobility, where we blur the lines between physical and digital experience and virtual experiences. And what does it mean for you, and why does it even matter? So we have some estimates which show you the magnitude of what can be achieved, and the biggest opportunity, I would say, which we are seeing now for our future. Number one is that if we look at the numbers, the facts, and then there's around 5 trillion estimate from McKinsey, or even 13 trillion estimate from our Citibank for the Metaverse opportunity. Number two is, if we think about it, the time and space where we are in doesn't really matter anymore. So mobility is not understood as going from point A to point B, but more about how can we connect with the world in different ways. And obviously virtual is one of the brilliant ways we have, in particular with the technology of digital twin, where we can be ourselves a digital twin, and also whole factories can be digital twins. And that makes it more inclusive and more accessible for everyone in the world. That's number two. Number three, which I would love to highlight to you why we bother, is also if we look at the examples of smart cities, where everything is connected and the whole technology comes to life, which we are using for the meta mobility, IoT, sensor-leaded technology. We have AI, we have digital twin technology, we have 5G, we have 6G, and we even have quantum acceleration, where quantum compared to computer will need 47 years, need a much, much shorter period. And all of this is coming together in an interconnected way, and we also at the same time have a big convergence of this technology. The convergence of technology has been estimated to be 230 trillion. So we have huge opportunities, and what kind of experiences can we generate? We have the industrial metaverse where we can work together in virtual worlds. We have the smart cities. We have also better access to healthcare, to education. And how can we unlock this potential of the meta mobility? This is something I'm very excited about, because Christine and myself over last summer have been working together to develop a framework. How can we unlock those opportunities? And Christine today will present to you the framework. Thanks a lot for your attention, and I'm with you with all my best wishes, but also certainly with all the work we have done together. So Christine, now over to you. Thank you.
We're sorry that Martha couldn't come, but glad that we have technology to enable her to be here virtually. So a quick question that I have for the audience. So how many of you own an electric vehicle? You know, if I had asked that a few years ago, the same audience, I would have only seen maybe a few hands. And it's incredible how much things have changed. Just another quick question. How many of you have ever driven an electric vehicle? And what I predict is in that the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a lot more hands go up. We are really now in an interesting point. I have spent over 30 years in automotive, and my journey in automotive had a really interesting start. My senior year at MIT, I got really interested and wanted to join the solar car team. And I very quickly became co-captain and driver, and we did 3 races. And that catapulted me into transportation. And not only just transportation, but how to do it sustainably. I mean, we as a team, we were going to change the world. So it's interesting, after my bachelor's and master's in mechanical, I hired into Ford. I spent 21 years there. And you know, when I think about my journey over the last 30 years since that solar car team and those races, I do have to admit, I thought we'd be a little bit more ahead of where we are today, but we really have been making progress. You know, Martha alluded to a lot of it. And how I look at it is, here we have many societal trends coming into play, into this mix, right? There's this whole new shared economy that we have, right? Personalization. People want their own experiences. And then you have this new generation of kids. So I have 3 sons. They're 19, 21, and 24. My oldest son, 24, he did not want his driver's license. I couldn't even comprehend that, because that's the first thing I wanted to do the day I could, right? And his quote to me was, "Mom, I have better things to do with my time." And I was like, wow. So it's really interesting. We have those dynamics. So there's all the data and facts about the huge drop of age 16 to 19-year-olds getting their license now. Huge drop from like in the 80s. And then we have coupled all of those technologies. So Martha alluded to a lot of it, you know, in terms of changing the experience with, here we have sensors and cameras and LiDARs that are helping with autonomous vehicles. We have data now with connected vehicle data. We have augmented and virtual reality. And when you look at how that can change the way we move people and goods, it's creating these new business models. And so for the last, I'd say like about 10 years, the automotive industry and startups are really looking into how can they better leverage the data? How do we create these new experiences? So as I look at it, we have mobility 1.0, current state kind of thing, and we're transitioning into 2.0. We're looking into electrification. There are autonomous vehicles out there. Granted, it did not get to be what people thought just a few years ago in terms of a lot more on the road, but it is going out, it is getting out there, and especially in certain use cases. So we have that 2.0. What we're going to be heading towards is mobility 3.0. And I look at 3.0 is autonomous vehicles and better asset utilization. So think about how we have distributed ledger, smart contract technology, how we could have asset pools of vehicles of all different shapes and sizes, asset pools of, let's say, construction trucks, farm trucks, and that you have with those smart contracts, you don't need a back office. It's really changing our thought into cost per mile mentality instead of a vehicle ownership that sits 95% unused at home in the garage. So for me, this whole new way of movement of people and goods is not only providing accessibility, but it's us rethinking our usage of it and having much better asset utilization. I personally don't see how we can go into the future with our current mindset. The world cannot sustain it as populations grow and as third world countries want cars. We need to think differently. But also, the technology provides that accessibility and the efficiency. So we're starting to see that. I'm imagining, let me land in London and have my, super app that's good everywhere. I don't have to log in every time I go to a new city, and it tells me instantaneously all my different options to get from Heathrow to my hotel and what the time and the cost would be. And who knows, maybe the tube at $580 now pounds, I don't know if it went up in price or not yet, but is faster than taking, an Uber or personal taxi, right? So having that information, we make better informed decisions. And so that's a little bit about my thoughts of the mobility side. And I'd like to have Alan share a little bit about his experiences and background.
Well, thank you very
Thoughts,
much, Kristen. Appreciate that very much. And as I said with my introduction, I'm a member of the board of the Transportation Channel. It's first of a kind digital network for distributing transportation information, news, and entertainment as well. And I just ask you to check out the transportationchannel.com, the I got the traffic bug when I was in high school, working for the city, counting cars and thinking, there's got to be a better way of doing this. I ended up, I'm an electronics engineer, and I spent my career applying new technologies to transportation problems. And we are on the cusp of finally taking advantage of these new technologies and connectivity. My very, very first project coming out of college, years ago, I'll not say when, was connecting the first centralized computer to traffic signals in the city of Leicester in England. That was the first one in England. So connectivity has been my life. And when I looked at this wonderful book here and the chapter on metamobility, I was stunned.
It's chapter 7.
Chapter 7. I was stunned at the perception and the prediction of what can be, having gone through in my career what we were hoping for, and we think it's coming to be a reality. You see on slide 9 here of the 10, 3 key points we try to pick out here. And these are all benefits that we're going to see, and you will all be affected by this in the future. I start off with road network performance here. The current standard for us to find out as engineers and operators of the infrastructure as to what the heck is going on out there are point sources of detection. And Kristen mentioned this. You know, we started off with loops in the road. And when you went over the loop, it was detected, the car was detected. We moved to video, that was a big step. We got LiDAR now, we got radar, and we're using Bluetooth. As your car passes by, use Bluetooth detectors, at least we can now find out where it came from, where it's going to, tracking. All anonymous, it's all private. But this was a revolutionary change. What we're looking at with metamobility is vehicle to infrastructure connectivity. And this is the theme that you'll see through these 3 points here. The infrastructure talking to the vehicle, and the vehicle talking to the infrastructure. So finally, what we've got now is real-time connectivity between vehicles and the infrastructure. And through the network, we can build this picture up of what's going on now. And from tracking these vehicles, what's going to be needed is these vehicles track through the network. Isn't that incredible? You would think it was obvious we should be doing this, but it's got to this point where we can do it. We can now do this. The real-time connectivity also has enabled aggregation of data, so we better understand how we use these road networks and where our investment should be in the road networks in the future. That's where the digital twin comes in. That's another theme through this. The smart city with the infrastructure, and the digital twin with getting the data and using this to imagine what's going on there in the future. The new mobility services, and again Kristen alluded to this, and that his son not wanting to waste his time learning to drive. Despite what Mr. Musk says, autonomous vehicles will not be possible without being told what's ahead of the vehicle. The vehicle can only detect so much from the LiDAR or the radar or whatever on board of it is. And you all know this when you set off on a journey and you think, oh, it's going to take me half an hour, and you get stuck in traffic. Then all of a sudden there's all this traffic that wasn't there normally. There's some car broke down, or there are roadworks ahead. Only now are we getting a handle on how we can capture this and pass it to vehicles, so you know what's happening. You've got it now on Waze and Google Maps. Waze is wonderful because you set off on a journey and it'll tell you what can you expect on the way. autonomous vehicles are not going to function without that. So this is a phenomenal importance to the vehicle, but also autonomous vehicles need road signs to be able to look at what's going on right ahead of them, and traffic signals, and also road markings. So it stays in lane, for example. Think of the road markings that you see, that you can hardly make sense of what the heck is going on here. Yeah, that feedback from the autonomous vehicle to the agencies that are responsible for maintaining your road marks is critical for the autonomous vehicle. And poor road agencies at the moment, the transportation infrastructure agencies, they can't cope with the traffic signals out there and their problems and road markings that wear out. They need that information from the AV. They can't work in isolation. So that's critical feedback information for maintenance that we just don't have at the moment. And then finally, this is the golden goose here, the improvements in road safety. I hate to say this, but we have one of the worst fatality records on our road of any developed country in the world. We're coming up to 40,000 road fatalities per year. It is totally unacceptable. And it's getting worse. The last 3 years since COVID, every year it's got worse, and we're now 22% higher in fatalities than we were 4 years ago. And what are we doing? I mean, I'm a great supporter of electric vehicles. I've had one myself. But when we're introducing vehicles like this new Cybertruck, which is 6,000 pounds and does 0 to 60 in 2.9 seconds, which is faster than a Lamborghini, you've got to think we're going in the wrong direction. What we can correct this with is connectivity to the vehicle-to-vehicle connectivities to avoid collisions, vehicle to pedestrians and cyclists to avoid those fatalities as well. And simple things like, you know, you're driving along and you hear emergency vehicle police sirens, or it's a fire truck, or where's it coming from? You know, I've got to do something here. I'm supposed to pull over and stop. Is it affecting me? Well, we can now tell the driver, you need to take notice of this, but this is where the emergency vehicle is, and you've got to stop here now, or whatever, and we're changing traffic signals to let them through. So these are all major improvements that we can expect, and they're going to happen now.
And Alan, that's a really good point about the safety. And so as I think about the impact that intelligent infrastructure and smart cities could have, I mean, it's huge, you're right. So I would love to get your insight here about, okay, so who would you say is the world leader as you look at smart city intelligent infrastructure, and how can the U.S. improve?
That's a very good question.
I know.
We don't know. There's a couple of polls have come out in the last couple of months, and we're only just going into June, and this is 2024 polls. And one of them looked at, this was the Smart City Observatory, I've got to get the name right. And they did a survey, worldwide survey of cities and which are the best smart cities. And they had Singapore's top, Zurich and Helsinki second and third. Wow, that's great.
I know, when Alan and I were talking, I'm like, I'm not really sure I understand what the criteria is on this. So.
And then there was another poll that came out, and this one's by a company called PropTech OS, which had a very detailed analysis showing infrastructure, smart city infrastructure, services, and firms, top tech firms working in that city. I mentioned Helsinki and Zurich. They didn't get a mention in this one.
Yeah, not a mention.
Didn't appear in the top 10 in Europe. And you think, well, what's going on here? And I looked at this list, and on there, and the top world list, New York was in there. New York didn't even make the US one. And if you combined Europe and the poll of Europe and assessment of Europe and the US, okay, so Paris was top. But Seattle and Miami were second. So we had 2 out of the top 3, and we actually had 7 of the top 10 cities. So we're there. We just have to understand what do we mean by a smart city when we rank them?
Yeah, and
get
you
a
know,
common
so we were
appreciation.
connected by Jeff DeCoux from the Autonomy Institute, and I'm not sure how many of you guys are aware of this, but there is this whole intelligent infrastructure initiative on the SH-130 corridor. It's like 92 miles that goes through Austin, Texas, literally leveraging federal funding and also industry. And one of the key members of kind of the group is someone that's spearheading, his name is William T, spearheading the federal like bank, like a federal infrastructure bank, so that we're having a different methodology of funding to get our infrastructure up to the 21st century. I mean, really, our infrastructure is from 1950. So it's really exciting to see that there's groups of people that are coming together to really spearhead what I call a huge initiative.
Yes, yeah. And if there's any consolation here, there's things happening with American companies that are really going to be a major impact. You know, I've talked about vehicle infrastructure connectivity. I did a project here in Orange County, it was 4 years ago now, where we used data that came from General Motor cars, that they fed this data to a third party and made it available for engineering use. And this was phenomenal compared to what we were used to having from this point source of detection. I found out last week, General Motors have now taken the action of putting out an open standard for connectivity with vehicles that anybody can use.
Right.
That's what we need to bring us together.
It's going to make a difference. So we need to do our rapid fire question. So Alan,
Oh, yes, we do. Sorry.
as you look ahead in the next 12 months, looking at your crystal ball, what excites you most?
What excites me the most is we're there. We have this. You know, 1999, the US DOT came out with the standard for connectivity to vehicles. Yes, I did say 1999, right? And unfortunately, it was a technology that you needed radios at every traffic signal intersection. This technology had to go in cars as well. Well, Kristen was with Ford. She'll tell you, the auto manufacturer sat around saying, okay, well, there's no point in putting it in the car until we can talk to something on the street. And then the transportation agency said, we're not going to put money putting equipment in the street because there's nothing to talk to. It wasn't until
Chicken and egg.
it wasn't until 2023 that the standard was changed, and the Federal Communication Commission changed it to a cellular-based standard. Whoa! Cellular technology. We all have them. We all got them in our pockets. Yeah.
Thanks, Alan. Okay, so
that's what's exciting
for
there.
me, as I look into the next 12 months, I've embarked on an exciting adventure. I sold everything that I owned in Detroit, came with 2 carry-ons and a suitcase to Vieques, Puerto Rico, and was an official resident as of March 15th, and I am creating grid-independent, sustainable farming, water collection and purification, and wanting to cascade that. So I'm trying to take all these different things from my journey over the last 30 years and put it together and in a fun way. So very excited.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. I know that sparked some questions in the audience. Okay, there's some hands. We'll come back. We'll come back around.
How about public transportation? Trains?
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity. I mean,
I
I
know.
look
It
at
is.
it as you can look at any shape or size and have trains and bikes and subway systems.
Correct. And you have
everything go
nothing
together.
over here. So
I know.
I'm not waiting for cars who are talking to all kinds of systems because I'm on the 405.
That's fair.
Well, right.
I need a fast way of transportation. And trains, public transportation, or whatever you come up with, that's good.
Well, that,
I don't need a car.
That's where your smart mobility services coming in. You can expect a whole new range of mobility services that don't tie you to a rail line, that don't necessarily tie you to a particular bus route, but will enable you to get much more efficient choice of mode of transportation and more efficient getting you from A to B. That's what's going to happen with these new technologies coming in,
It's what has to
combined with
happen.
autonomous vehicles.
Okay, next question.
So you talked about the connectivity, and I live in San Diego County, and there is a legislation that they would like to pass, charging us per mile driven to our cars. What is your thoughts on that from a privacy issue and other issues and the impact of passing legislation like that and using technology to monitor that?
So for me, policy can help create change. People are not going to change unless there is a reason to change. And usually it's saving time, saving money, or other things. And so there's been many cases and examples in Europe especially when you look at Norway, who has the highest % of EV sales, on how policies can help create change. And so for me, it's looking at the right policies, not unintended consequences, because we need to change our behavior and people will resist.
It's called road user charging, RUC. And that's what it is. You get charged for your use of the road. And for those of you who don't drive a lot and who pay the same amount for
Then you
your
win.
road taxes, as the person who's out there all the time driving around, this is big. Right? And what you'll find is, because I was part of the experiment in California to do this, what you find is you've just made much more aware of what the cost of driving is. And it makes you think twice about that trip and makes you think more about what other way can I do this that's cheaper for me.
That's true. If you look at that cost per mile mentality that I mentioned, I think there's better transparency and it will drive decisions. Are you going to walk the mile to the store or take your car and pay for that or not? So it is
Interesting.
drives decisions.
One more question.
So first, I want to say, Christine, I am really excited to hear about you moving to Vieques and trying to help with the infrastructure.
And
in
I'm
Puerto
learning
Rico
Spanish too. So.
because learning Spanish because I feel like they've been working on that one road through San Jose since like 2000. So thank you for working on that. My question is really leaning more into the privacy aspect. When we're thinking about the IoT, the interconnectivity of everything, smart cities, which my company helps to build those,
Nice.
and how that interrelates with technology, where do you see the intersectionality with people's rights to be forgotten, like in Europe, and their right to privacy so that they're not being monitored by Big Brother all the time?
Well, and it's not only privacy, but it's also that security, the whole cybersecurity of it. That is really a whole huge topic of discussion. We had actually talked about this before, and I had just said, wow, we don't really have enough time today to get into it. It absolutely has to be forefront, in my opinion, both of those things. And I do know that there's a lot of discussions, I've been part of them, on that. I've actually been part of an FBI automotive network, and that's been the whole focus. And so it is recognized. Alan,
And there's a lot of sensitivity to that within the transportation profession, especially with the road user charging that was talked about here, where you pay from going from A to B, or how many miles you travel on a particular road. And it has to be down to that level of detail, because you cross from one county to another, all right, then somebody else is going to be getting the money from you, that's going to be charged to you. Tremendous sensitivity to that, and I know from the work that's been done on connectivity to the vehicles, how an inherent part of all these protocols and the telecommunications is ensuring the privacy and security.
And there will be some bumps along the road, but we have been very smart as a society of figuring things out. Remember when the web is going to blow? Like 10 times over, maybe more. Anyway, we are going to figure it out.
Did you really say bumps along the road there?
Yeah, I did.
You did say that, yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, excellent discussion. Thank you so much, panelists, Kristen and Alan. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
you.
moderator.